Hi, the first thing to do is to create a new composition. Named my one Walk. I'm using the standard HD TV 1920 by 1080 resolution at 25 frames per second, and the background color is white. The duration doesn't need to be 30 seconds though. You need to set the duration for 1 second and 9 frames. 1 second and 9 frames gives us exactly 33 frames. It's good to use odd numbers when working on cycles, as this gives a nice midpoint. When setting an odd number range, you also want to consider an even amount of spaces along the range. At 33 frames, the midpoint would be 17, and then we would have an even spacing of 4 frames throughout. Once all those are set, click on OK. The next thing is to import the source files for the creature. Inside Walk Cycle, there is a folder called Monster Parts. Inside that folder, I have a folder for arms, a folder for bodies, a folder for heads, a folder for legs, a folder for tails, and a folder for wings. What you have to do is making sure that you what you have to do is that you have to build a monster. You might want to start by choosing one of the body types. I'm going to go for this one. I'm going to drag it onto the screen, into the composition, and pressing S, I'm going to set the scale. Yes, I think that's a better leg. And with the leg, I've taken the thigh and I've set its color mode to be multiply, because when it's normal, it gets that white stroke around it. I think it's better if it doesn't have that white stroke, so using the toggle switches modes button at the bottom, I've gone from that view to our transfer modes, and let's go to multiply. Alright, so I'm going to get those, going to duplicate those, going to drag them to the back. I'll just move them slightly like that. And that's our creature pretty much set up. The only thing that I'm going to do now is that I'm going to select all the pieces, and I'm going to come to Layer, Transform, and I'm going to choose Flip Horizontal. So now everything's pointing that way. It's made a small change to everything. I'm just going to realign those. Let's get those 2 thighs. Let's move them back. There we go. And maybe that arm forward a touch as well. Yes, that's a bit better. So you see that there is a nice relationship between the neck and the shoulder joint, done nicely in a line. So you got neck, shoulder, elbow, almost in line with the hip. Knee is slightly over. Heel and ankle arrangement slightly back. I could, by the look of it, get that leg and rotate it into place. But before I go any further, the important thing with this now is setting up the rotation points. So, for example, if I choose, we only have one arm I see at the moment, so let's duplicate another one of those, and that goes right at the back. And this is a very good example. If I click on this button here, I'll do a thing called solo, which means I only see that item. So if I press R for rotation, and there we go, we see what the problem is here, is that that's not where the shoulder rotates. We need to move the anchor point. We use the pan behind tool. Grab that and move it to the correct position, roughly there. And now, there we go, look at that, free swinging. If I bring the rest of the creature back, you can see, cooey, hello there. So I need to do that with everything else. As I get to reset the anchor points, transform points of each layer, I'm also going to hide that layer. So for the foot, I need to be rotating up by the knee. There we go. So imagine that's kind of where the knee is. So that's where we will be rotating. So let's unsolo that and hide it. The leg, the body, the rotation point for there is about where the hips are. If you can imagine where the hips are, I guess if we bring open also the thigh, so we can see that the thigh is around there, so we should be in line where that is going to be. So there's the body. Okay, so now that I've got all the pieces assembled and I've got the scale set, I have now set the rotation points for each of the layers, and I've been thinking about, how a character moves. So thinking about making something walk, where's the hip, where is the knee, where is the ankle, where is the shoulder blade, where would the neck be? And so that's all been now set. What happens though is that if I wanted to move the leg, so let's say I get the front leg and I choose rotation, when I lift that leg up, as you can see what I'm doing, there's the leg going back, it'd be great if the knee came along as well. That would make our job far less tedious, because now I would have to get the leg and rotate it a bit, but also I have to reposition it. So this becomes problematic, the way that things remain as individual items. It's great that they can rotate independently of each other, so nothing walks like a robot, but you want elements to be connected together. Now, that's where After Effects has this thing called parenting. We use parenting, this little whippy thing, to say that this belongs to that. But in this case, we say that this object, this is the parent of it. So that means when I rotate this, the leg, the bottom part, the thing that I've connected from here to here, that rotates too from the parent's anchor point. But it also means that the foot part, let's undo that, I'm using the wrong parameter there, the foot part can still bend on its own anchor point. So I can move that, and I can move that, and I can move that. And that's very handy for animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up our parenting. Now that we've done that for there, let's get foot at the back, and that connects to the thigh. So that means again I can get the thigh if I press the rotate, the back thigh, and we can see that I can do exactly the same. The arms, well, they don't need any parenting for rotation, but they do for movement. The same as the legs, actually. The thigh now becomes parented to the body, and the head becomes parented to the body. The front thigh is parented to the body, and the front arm is parented to the body. That means now I can get the body, and as I almost have everything, let's undo that, I'll get the arm and the back arm, parent that to the body. So now I can move my creature about and everything moves together. Now the creature is set up for animation. And we see that the character now has been put into this pose where the left leg is at the back and the right leg is at the front, the right arm is at the back, and the left arm is at the front. The head's looking straight ahead. I am in frame number 1. Well, the first frame anyway, they call it number 0. And if I come along to this composition here, I can discuss what we're going to do. Here we have what's known as the contact position. So both legs are touching the ground, contact. There are 4 main positions that make up a walk cycle, and we just repeat those 4 main positions from one side of the body to the other. The 4 positions are the first one, this contact position. Number 2, which is the down position, which is the lowest part of the walk cycle. The passing pose, in that the one leg is passing over the other, and that's as the body is on the rise. And then there is the final position, which is called the peak point. The first thing that we do is in frame 1, we're going to start with our contact position. So all keenly astride, and I set a rotation keyframe on each layer, and for the body layer also a keyframe for position. Now this I can I also want at the end of this composition. let's select the keyframe for the arm 4 layer, the front arm. If I select that, I will go copy and then Command V, and you see that it gets pasted at the end. It's probably just as quick to do that. Making sure again there is a keyframe for rotation and position. So that's the beginning and the end. Exactly in the middle at frame 17. We're now going to set the body in the opposite contact position. Now, before I go much further, I want to make sure that my contact positions match up with each other. So I'm coming to my view menu and I'm choosing show rulers. I'm dragging down a guide and I'm using the front heel as my guide for this. So I want to make sure that when I have reversed the position of the legs and arms, that we are still working well with the same baseline. So now it is just a matter of reversing the pose for the creature. Now I see that I have not set rotation keyframes for here and here. Let's fix that up. Come back to frame number 17 and we see now I can get the value. Switch it back. Alright, so now we have the arms swinging, and now let's get those legs working. So move that to there and move that to there. And there's the start of our walk cycle. And now that I've got the legs and the arms in their opposite orientations, I'm going to make sure that I have everything keyframed for everything else keyframed at frame number 17. Now we're going to go to frame 5 and we're going to set the right leg so that it appears to be raised at the knee, so it's moving diagonally up there and the foot is still parallel to the ground. And now that I have that, I know how much I need to raise the position of the character. There we go. And then also I'm going to set the rotation a bit, rotate forward a bit, and I'm going to have to, like that, work on that leg a little bit more. That looks good. And now we see that the whole body is starting to move quite nicely there. Now, I'm going to do the same thing for frame number 21. Now the way to do that is that I could once again set keyframes, but what we are essentially doing is copying the same behaviors from here to here, there to there, but not on this side, but on that side, this side of our character. So I can get arm and I can get the arm keyframe value for frame number 5. I can get the value for the front arm at keyframe number 5. I can copy that and I can come to the opposite arm at frame number 21 and copy that value. So I'm going to get the leg thigh for that side, and now I'm going to apply it to leg thigh on this side, and the same with the foot. There it is. Copy that, come to foot, making sure that I'm not moving my pointer, that my pointer is at frame number 21. So again, I paste. And body and position, I copy those. And, well, I'm selecting the same thing this time. There's only one body. And I paste. So you see now we have good movement on that side as well. Okay, let's go forward to frame number 9. This is where we're going to do our passing positions. So the passing frames are at frame number 9 and at frame number 13. The peak, let's have a look here. So that's passing and that's peak, passing and peak. The peak frames will be frames 13 and 29. Now, I think I got something wrong before. The passing frames are frames number 9 and frame number 25. That is got all the weight on it now. And then it's back here. If I look at my pose number 3, it is the leg behind that's passing through. So let's get our leg here. I'm going to, just for safety's sake, I'm just going to set keyframes here, here, and here. Then at frame number 9, I'm going to rotate a bit like that. How does that look? Let's rotate that a bit more. Okay, I'm going to take those two keyframes out now. Yes, that looks much better. Okay, and I'll take out that keyframe there. Oh, is that a head keyframe? Oh well, that doesn't matter. Now, at frame number 13, we should still have the leg And that looks like a good first step. Now I want to take these keyframe values, this one and this one, copy those, and I'm going to select the leg on the other side. I come along to frame number 25, the 1 second mark, and I go Command V and I paste. I'm now going to get these two foot values, that one and that one, from the other side, copy those, come to the foot and choose, not moving the time marker, and there you can see that plays pretty well. We can add some secondary motion to this by, first of all, if I get the head, we could say that maybe at this point I'm going to rotate the head back a bit. And if I come along to about here, maybe I'll try rotating it forward a bit. I think that last rotation isn't too good. There we go. And I could now decide to come to the monster parts. I think I'm going to go for this tail. So I'll get that, and I'm going to scale it. And I'm going to come to the layer and reorientate it. It's kind of how I'd like the tail to look. And I'll put it just behind the body, making sure that I get the tail and I parent it to the body, and also getting the transform handle, the anchor point, and setting that with the hip as well. So you can see that it moves already. I could now decide to, let's set a keyframe for rotation. And let's say at this point it's going to come up a bit. At this point, down a bit. And at this point, up a bit. I'm going to get that first keyframe for rotation, and I'm going to put that at the end so that, again, it loops well. So that looks pretty good. I'm not too sure how I feel about this part here, the way that it cups under. Something about it I find slightly disagreeable. So I'm going to get the tail. And I think I find that a little less unseemly. But as a basic form, we're starting to get there. Let's just put in a little bit of head movement, head rotation. So let's say here the rotation, I'm just going to maybe dip that down slightly. There we go. Now, let's try and get this monster to move. What we're going to do is we're going to get this composition and we're going to put it inside a new composition. So we'll keep the background color neutral for the meantime, but the duration, we're going to take that back to our original 30 seconds. There we go. I'll make sure that we can work in fit view so we can see the whole scene. And I'm going to grab the composition we've just been working on, the one called Walk. Making sure that I've called my new composition Scene. Let's come to Walk, and I'm dragging that in. And here's our creature. You notice that the composition, well, this scene composition is 30 seconds long, as we'd expect. But our walk, we need to be able to make this loop. Now, there's a couple of ways we can do that. One is I could duplicate the layer, and this is perhaps the easiest way, but also the most difficult way in some aspects. What we want to do instead is that we're going to use a little bit of time remapping. If I come up to Layer, Time, Enable Time Remapping, as soon as I choose that, we get two keyframes appear, and we notice that now I can extend out the duration of the composition, so it's no longer locked to its 1 second and 9 frames, but the composition now can exist for any length that I'd like. The only problem is that when I get past 1 second and 9 frames, the content within this composition, Walk, it disappears, and you can see why, because in the Walk composition there's only 1 second and 9 frames. We can't be magically adding stuff. So what are we doing here? Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to tell After Effects that once we get past this point here, just put that frame over there and then the next one. So in short, loop between here and here throughout this amount of time. And because it's a loop, it'll always be in the same place. I'm going to select the first keyframe, hold down the Option key when I click on the time remap symbol. It highlights this word called time remap. I've entered the scripting area of After Effects, and I'm clicking on this for a thing called the expression language menu. And what we're going to be doing is adding an expression on this keyframe to help us with the looping. I just need to come down to Property and choose Loop Out Type Cycle Duration, Out Type Cycle number keyframes equals 0. There we go. And now I have this continuing loop. Now that we have our loop working, what I can do is that I can now, with this composition, I can animate, instead of all the working parts on the inside, we've already done that. But with this composition now, I can open up the position controller and I can start to animate just the position of our character through space. The only thing I need to do is I need to make sure that the timing of the animation and position matches the cycle of what's happening with the legs. For example, if I play this back now, we see that it feels that there is a bit of slippage going on with the feet. So if I shorten this down, we see that flows a lot better. Great. Now, if I wanted my character to walk in the other direction, the easiest way to get our character to turn around and walk in the other direction is that we're going to get this layer and we're going to do a thing called a split. If I come up to the Edit menu, we see that we have Duplicate Layer, which would do exactly what you think. It makes a complete exact copy and puts it on top. Now here's an example. Command D. There. Exactly the same. What split does is almost the same thing. It creates a duplicate, but what happens is that After Effects also says the original file I'll keep right up to here, the playhead, and then I'm going to duplicate that layer, and the duplicate will begin from this point onwards. So when one ends, the other begins. They're both the same thing. I'm going to go split the layer. I'm going to come to Layer, Transform, Flip Horizontal. So I've split the layer. I have a keyframe. And then this first keyframe, I'm just going to drag that over there. Took me about 8 seconds to get here. Let's make it take 8 seconds to get back. I'll just mark the end position there, and I'll get this to play. Now the only problem that we have here is that our character makes a bit of a leap there going on with this character. And here you can see there is no symmetry when the character changes direction. The best way I can do this is by slightly slipping this layer over that layer, and we see there is quite a difference between one frame and the next. Well, let's undo that, and let's say here on the last frame I'm going to use this. I'm going to use the little camera icon, and I'm taking a snapshot. That means now that when I come to the next frame, I can press this button here and show where the snapshot is. That means I can get this value and start to change it a little bit, and I'll be able to visually check to make sure that my change in direction is as seamless as possible. That's looking pretty good. So let's have a look at that. There it is, pacing from one side to the other. The next thing I would do is I'd be starting to build in my scenery and my backgrounds and my foregrounds. But let's leave this video at this, and good luck with your walk cycles. Thanks for watching.